We are live. We are live on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today Ryan Blair. What is up, brother?
How you doing, Jeff? Good to see you, my friend.
This is kind of a long time coming. I've been following you for a little while, watching everything you do, and I love having high level entrepreneurs on. So this is going to be a fun conversation. I'm sure my audience will get a ton of value out of this. I want to essentially just learn about you. Let's bring it right back to Ryan as a kid. Where'd you grow up, and give me your first introduction to being an entrepreneur. What lessons you learned as a kid? Like what kind of guided you in that direction?
Well, my upbringing was anything but entrepreneurial. I guess I had some entrepreneurship in there. My father was an engineer. My mother was a homemaker. My dad worked his whole life to get to a place where he would be able to provide for his family. And then unfortunately, he got addicted to drugs, my mother to alcohol, and my middle class family upbringing got torn apart. And so I had an abrupt change in my life where I went from the middle to poverty, in a moment's notice. And when that occurred, then I got really exposed to entrepreneurship. I got to see how entrepreneurship was all over the place. On the streets, there's a lot of different types of entrepreneurs. And, so I started to get involved in entrepreneurial rackets myself. I was stealing computers. I was involved in a gang. I did all kinds of things that were designed basically to feed me. My mom couldn't afford to put food on the table, couldn't afford to buy me new clothes. I was growing a lot, and so I had to figure out a way to survive. And entrepreneurship, illegal entrepreneurship, was the way that I did that. About 17 years old, though, my mother introduced me to a mentor who was in the real estate industry. And I got to see a whole new way of entrepreneurship, a legal way, one where, this person became a multimillionaire, or he was a multimillionaire, I should say, owned many different homes, lived a life of luxury that I had never witnessed before. Even in the middle class, I'd never seen wealth like this. And so as a result, I chose that I was going to become an entrepreneur, a legal entrepreneur, and I'd follow in his footsteps and start companies and build companies from there. So, I had some entrepreneurial DNA in me somehow, some way. I did newspaper routes. I did lemonade stands as an early child, and then illegal entrepreneurship. And then at about 17 years old, I decided I was going to venture into legal entrepreneurship. And I'm now 45, so I've been doing it for over 25 years.
You're a 77 baby.
Yeah, 1977.
When's your birthday? One month.
What's that?
When month's your birthday?
July 14th. July 14th.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm January 25th, 77. So we're both 45. So
Nice.
I love that you said that. And this is something that I've talked about. I mean, levels of entrepreneur. I mean, you could look at a local street drug dealer as an entrepreneur. You could look at a local artist selling their stuff at a farmer's market as an entrepreneur. So I love that you said that, because a lot of people misinterpret what a true entrepreneur is, the hustle. But one thing you said there was, I had it kind of in me, the genes almost. So are you a believer that people are born as an entrepreneur, or you have to be taught to be an entrepreneur? Could you be taught? It's that $1 million question we always go by, and I'll tell you what I mean by that after.
Well, entrepreneurship is not how our society is built. It's built for people to be a part of the industrialized complex. So you have to have some programming that goes against the programming that our society is built on. I have a 13-year-old son, and I marvel when I go talk to the teachers, and they tell me like, oh, well, your son, is going to be good at, this. And I'm just like, you guys have no idea, how this world really works. You guys, the education system is built for you to be a cog in the wheel, to be a slave for the majority of your life, to give your best years to these companies. And it has nothing to do with entrepreneurship. So, because of my upbringing, I wasn't educated the same way everyone else was. And also I had some learning disabilities. So my lack of education is what made me a great entrepreneur. So I think we are all born with the capacity to be entrepreneurs, but society programs your parents, programs your environment, and programs you into being anything but an entrepreneur.
I love that. I love that. So when you look at because I got a 14-year-old and a 16-year-old, daughter's 16, my son's 14. So when you look at your son, 13, is your only child you have?
Yeah, I have a 13-year-old boy.
Yeah. So when you look at your 13-year-old son, do you see the glimpses of entrepreneurship in him already? Do you see any hints of it, or are you slowly planting these little seeds in him? And this is something I do with my
Well,
kids. I plant these little seeds in them,
yeah.
right? So let's talk about that quickly.
Yeah, I share with them my numbers. I'll tell them how much money I made today. I'll go like, look, I made millions of dollars this month. Look at this. Like I take him through the math,
Yeah.
right? So he has a whole different perspective. He's in a classroom and kids are talking about, maybe saving up to buy a car, and he's talking about changing the world. So because of the language that I use, he knows about millions of dollars. He knows that it's possible to earn and make millions of dollars. And he gets to negotiate against a pretty shrewd negotiator, which is me, day in and day out. So this young man is being trained to be, a negotiator. Now, whether or not he chooses to follow in my footsteps, that's completely up to him. But he will have a foundation and an understanding that he can make millions of dollars. He'll never have the belief that that is unobtainable to him, because he's watched me do it. And
Yeah.
and he's smarter than me in many areas. So there's no reason why he can't, if that's what he chooses to do.
When you look at your son, and I'm going to give you just a little different scenario here. Both my kids, I've done decently well for myself. So, but both my kids, the biggest fear I had as a parent was to get them so comfortable that they would not understand what it takes to have that work ethic, that value, that hustle. So from a very young age, we taught them they had to learn how to cook, how to clean, how to do laundry. Like my 16-year-old, me and my wife get home, my 16-year-old has dinner ready, has laundry done. We got her first job the other day. She's working at a farm, a local farm, not because she has to, because I wanted her to learn kind of that work ethic, that hustle from a very young age. Are you a believer in that with your kid, or are you have that mindset? Because a lot of what I find with some entrepreneurs is they have that mindset, they struggle so much that when they get to a certain level, they want their children not to struggle. Do you believe that teaching that struggle is a good thing, or the opposite?
I think every soul has its own set of things that it needs to learn. Some people are going to be much more biased toward action, and some people are going to be much more biased toward laziness. And our job is to try to help them correct those bias. Like, so if they're overacting, we need to slow them down. If they're underacting, we need to speed them up. So that way they can understand and find a output ratio that is conducive to their capacity. But ultimately, the pain of untapped potential is probably the worst epidemic that we have in our society. And so whether we need to prescribe, techniques to help our children slow down and not have as much anxiety and not worry so much about, perfectionism and A's, because some children have that in them. They're like, they have to have A's or they're going to freak out. And it's like, well, it's okay if everything isn't perfect. And then other children are happy turning in F work, and it's like, that's not okay, right? Like we have to, we have to try harder. So I think as parents, our goal is to learn how our children learn, and then to adapt to their learning, and to speak and teach to where they're at energetically, and to try to help them expand, whether it's that they need to detach from perfectionism or they need to attach to delivering at a higher quality in life. We have to really meet their needs and learn how to meet their needs. It's not about who we are, it's about who they are, and us basically speaking to them where they're at and then helping them expand and grow to meet their potential.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I'm going to dive back to one little thing and then we'll kind of move forward. When you're going through being a quote unquote entrepreneur, and you went through obviously some criminal activity, were you ever in trouble with the law, or you at least bypassed that?
I've been in trouble with the law before.
Okay.
Yeah. I've made a lot of mistakes, and I've been in trouble. At one point I had $1 billion in lawsuits that I was facing as an entrepreneur. And so I've had to deal with lots of the law, and I've been accused of a whole bunch of stuff, some of which was true, some of which wasn't true. And I've learned some powerful lessons about integrity and ego, and powerful lessons about insurance and lawyers and litigation and stuff that, that I have to tell you that I'm tried and tested on this subject. But now my approach to life is far different than it was early on as an entrepreneur, where I was willing to take risks that are just ridiculous because I didn't really care. When you come from nothing and, you're used to abject poverty, $100 million doesn't mean anything to me. It just doesn't. So I would be willing to risk $100 million. I'd be willing to risk even more than that. And now in my older age, I look at some of the things that I did as a kid and I as a young entrepreneur, and I smile a bit because, I just was totally detached from the value of money altogether. And as a result, there's some consequences and some mistakes that I've made.
Give me some lessons on that. When you're going through that.
What do you what kind of lessons do you want? I got 100 of them.
Let's talk about it. So when you said that you obviously litigating in lawsuits and all that stuff like that, as an entrepreneur, you can feel your walls are crashing on you, right? Because you build something. And I'm going to be very honest. When I bring on guests, I try to learn as least as I possibly can about them, to be as curious as I can about them. So it gives me just a raw feeling. So I have no idea what you're talking about, whether you believe me or not. I have no idea. So when you're dealing with obviously people attacking your company and you're trying to defend something you built, how do you separate that personal, like almost like that personality or that personal side of it to the business side of it? Because it can get very emotional when people are attacking your person, attacking who you are as an individual, not the business, right?
Yeah, well, they're going to attack the bigger you get. So our legal system is structured as such that lawyers will go out of their way to find reasons to sue you. And these are not people that have ever had a relationship with your company. Yeah. They're not people that know you. They just look at you. They look at your numbers. The news gets out that you've got a lot of money in your bank account. And these people are going to go try to find a way to steal it. And they're going to do so by maybe they test your products and they look for loopholes in the law so they could bring a lawsuit. Maybe they contact some disgruntled customers, or they contact happy customers and they shift them to be disgruntled so that they can, use that as reason to sue you. So the bigger you are, the more lawsuits you're going to get. And, Apple is involved in billions of dollars of lawsuits, and Facebook is. And this is the nature of the litigious system that we live in our culture. You got to learn how to deal with it. Now, some of the things that I've learned, though, along the way is, one, never make matters worse. So before, I would be like, oh, you want to sue me? Well, I'll sue you. And next thing you know, I'm entangled in lawsuit after lawsuit after lawsuit, just making matters worse. So now when I'm faced with the challenge, I prescribe to the principle of I'm not going to make matters worse. And the other thing is, as opposed to receiving the burden of the challenge emotionally, I don't get entangled in it.
Okay.
I see the challenge. I look around it, walk around it. I see it in 3D, I observe it objectively, and then I say, let's dance. And I try to dance with the challenge. Now, I face challenges every single day as an entrepreneur. That's life. That's what we signed up for. Entrepreneurship is about problem solving in the marketplace. And in order to solve problems in the marketplace, you have to solve problems on the inside of your walls to solve them on the outside. And that's literal too, in that you have to solve problems on the inside of you and the inside of your personal life in order to solve problems in your professional life, and then in order to solve problems in the marketplace. So as a result of that, you've signed up for a job to solve a lot of problems as an entrepreneur. And as you grow and scale, more problems are going to come your way than you can ever imagine. And so you have to learn how to dance with the problems. And so when I have a day like 2 days ago, it was some of the most trying problems. I had a man injured on a job that I care deeply about. And I was like, wow, this was a rough day. I had my son got in trouble at school, and there was probably 6 or 7 other things going on that day. And it was, started at 4 a.m. and I'm just dealing with it. I'm just in it. And it's like, I'm just like, all right, let's go. Today's the day we get to dance. And I'm not going to, freak out that my son got in trouble and then freak out that my friend, my one of my men got hurt, and freak out that this happened, freak out that happened. It's like, I'm going to dance with this. I'm just going to show up. I'm going to observe the problem. I'm not going to get entangled in it. I'm not going to make matters worse by any means. And I'm going to realize that today's a day that I get to build character and I get to build competency. And those are rare days. Some days we're just moving around and pushing paperwork around and not much growth happens.
Yeah.
But on those days, like 2 days ago, more growth happened in that day than probably has happened all year.
I love it. I love it. I mean, I started my first company at 17, but I really became an entrepreneur at 19, and we're the same age now. And I mean, everybody goes through those days. I mean, we all go through days like that. And when those days like that, the way I look at it is I break down everything in a two separations where it's like, could I make a change? Could I make a difference with this? Do I have any impact or control of this? If I don't have impact or control of it, I just push it aside and not stress about it. And let the world will spin, and one way or another that'll get solved. Tomorrow will be another day. The sun's going to rise, and the stuff that I could control and make a change of is only things I focus on. If I can't make an impact or a change of it, I just put it aside, and I'll deal with it tomorrow. And I just and that's how I kind of break down stuff. Not the almost lower the stress level, lower the anxiety, because we all get anxiety, we all get stressed. Like I went through the last 2-3 weeks where my sleep patterns were destroyed because I wasn't sleeping because stress. You go to bed and your mind starts running. And you start thinking things. And I deal with a company. Well, my main company is we're importing things. So logistically, it's become a nightmare the last 6 months because the price of the fuel, of gas prices, and every logistic company is trying to gouge everybody. So it's been a stressful moment because we're looking at our profit margins dropping on every time we sell a product. So you stress about that, but at the same time, you try to control what you control and you move on with it. When you got into real estate at, you said 17, 18, you started really diving into real estate.
Yeah.
What was your first?
Well, I started working for.
Sorry,
go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go. Give me an understanding.
I was just going to say, I started working for my mentor. He was in real estate, so I wasn't technically, I was an employee in a real estate company. I wasn't a entrepreneur in a real estate company at that point, but I did later on start investing in real estate.
What age did you start investing in real estate?
Well, I started shadowing him. So he would allow me, he'd buy foreclosure and he'd say, do you want to put some of your paycheck in that? And I'd be like, okay, I'll put $100 in this foreclosure. I'll put $125 in that foreclosure. And, and then after the returns came in, that $125 might be worth $225 or $175 in some cases. And so I first started shadow investing. And then from there, I started writing checks.
I love it. So what was your first actual legal business that you actually did and started on your own? At what age and where did you start with it? What industry? I
started a company called 24/7 Tech, and I was about 20 years old, and 19 years old, if I recall. And our byline was, if your network's a wreck, call 24/7 Tech. And this was right during the Y2K situation that we all faced. And this was at a time when, Windows was very buggy. You dealt with the blue screen of death all the time. Yeah. These things would just, shut down, not save your work. It was a disaster, right? This was early on in the days of enterprise computing. And so, my big idea was, call me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I'll repair your computer for you and fix your network. And I'd learned how to repair computers and, work on networks because I used to steal computers when I was in a gang. So, in essence, I transitioned what I learned, in my days of a gang into an actual profession later on. It was called 24/7 Tech.
I love it. And how long did you have that company for?
It was about a year and a half. And then at 24/7 Tech, I tried to raise venture capital. The structure that I was in and the partnership that I had wasn't conducive to that. And I talked to a couple of VCs and they told me this isn't scalable. And I was like, what does that mean? All of a sudden I was like, wait, you're not going to give me money because it doesn't scale. And so then I started, researching how do you scale? What kind of business models scale? What the hell are these guys talking about? Because, my mindset, I'm like, I could scale anything, and he's like, this is a hard problem to scale. And so then I started looking at things that were more scalable, and I started my second company, which was called Sky Pipeline. That was a broadband wireless service provider, and it was a far more scalable offer. And so I scaled that from about 21 years old to 24 years old into a $25 million company.
Did you exit that company?
Yeah, I exited that company at 24.
So that was your first exit at 24, which is pretty amazing because being a
Yeah, I raised venture
self-entrepreneur.
capital at 21, professional, from professional investors, and then exited at 24.
How many employees did you have at one time when you were running that company?
Only about, maybe about 25, maybe 30,
Still,
25,
it's still a
30.
good size for a 24-year-old.
Yeah, well, in a gang, I led about 100 people, so it wasn't hard for me to lead people. And I led people to do stuff that was far harder than pushing some paper around as an office manager.
When your relationship with your parents, let's go back to it. So when you were in the gang, how was your relationship with your parents? Like, did you, like, till this day, are your parents still with us?
No, but both my parents have transitioned. My mom and I have a deep love connection. We loved each other. I was a mama's boy. I loved her with all my heart. She was a mess as a parent, but I loved her unconditionally. It's like, I love you, even though, all this stuff. And then I blame my dad for everything naturally, right? So
Yeah.
like, my mom was a mess, my dad was a mess, but I chose to blame my dad. And we tend to do that. We tend to choose one parent as the enemy and then not see any of the faults in the other. And so as I've gone through my healing journey, as a result of both of their transitions, I've healed my relationship with both of them, and I've forgiven both of them, and I have a deep spiritual connection with both of them, even though they're no longer with me physically.
When did that spiritual healing, when did that start? What age did you start that?
So, well, my mom fell down a flight of stairs in 2011, and that was the beginning of me going on a spiritual journey. She was in a coma for 2 years. Through a lot of prayer and a lot of hardship, she woke up. She was then severely handicapped for the rest of her life. And so during that period of time, I started my spiritual journey, and I was going through all of the alchemy necessary for me to break wide open when she transitioned. And she transitioned in 2017, which we're going on the 5-year anniversary. I've been doing some deep reflection because it's just in a few days from now. And that moment changed my life forever. And that was when I decided to make spirituality my highest priority in life. Before, it was making money, and spirituality was just kind of designed to get me out of trouble. Then my mom passed away, and I was like, spirituality first, and I don't care about money, because I was blessed to have made enough money to not have to care about it as much, and beyond that, to have skills around making money. So I wasn't worried about making money because I had a very strong arsenal of skills built throughout my 20 year journey as an entrepreneur. So I wasn't too worried about that. I was worried about having a meaningful life and being able to make an impact and making my son proud and leaving a legacy and doing something meaningful, not just making money and accumulating trophies and possessions, but having a meaningful life.
I love that. I love that because that's something I always talk about. I mean, as an entrepreneur, if you're a true entrepreneur, you're not really afraid of losing money because you'll always find a way to make money. And I
Yeah.
love that.
Well,
And I love
yeah,
that. Sorry.
you're good at risk, right? Yeah, to be a good entrepreneur, you have to be willing to take risk, and that's what we do. We have the burden of risk in our society. It's easy to go get a job and then go, if that job doesn't work out, go get another job. It's hard to create a job.
When you found, how long of a transition did you find till you found peace with your passing of your mom? And I'll tell you why I'm
Uh,
asking this in a sec.
yeah, it's a lot of work, and the peace grows every single day. The first year of the anniversary of my mother's transition was hard. The second year, I started Altar Call on the very day of her transition in tribute to her. And I organized my first event on that day. And so I was ready to share year two, although very hard. Now, it's kind of strange to say this, but I look forward to the day because I can go so deep in that day and have such a deep connection that I know that this is a milestone day for me. And so I know people that haven't properly grieved and haven't properly adopted a philosophy around their transitioned loved ones. And as a result, it still weighs heavy on their heart. And I have a lot of deep empathy for that because I understand why that can occur. But I think when you go deeper down the spiritual path and deeper down the path of healing, that you can actually have a deep peace in your heart, and you've almost, it's like you didn't lose anything. You just established a new relationship. And that new relationship becomes very important to you. But for as long as you felt that you lost something and you're still feeling loss, it's hard to transition to that new relationship, that spiritual relationship that can be even more beautiful than the physical relationship that you had.
I'll tell you something in a sec, but when you're saying, and you keep using the word transition, why do you use that word so heavily? And because I haven't heard anybody, I've heard people say that, but you use it consistently.
Yeah.
What's your meaning of a transition?
Well, in my spiritual belief, and my belief is shared in all of the basic, most of the world's largest religions, the top 5 religions, all pretty much have very similar beliefs. And that there is another realm, whether you call that heaven, quantum. The scientists will tell you energy never dies. Some they call it spirit, some they call it angels, some they call it guides. There's another realm. Yeah. And when my mother transitioned, I could feel her in that realm. She would come to me at night. I would feel her presence. Things would move around the house. People would get messages and call me and say, I got a strange message. Does this make any sense to you? So there was all kinds of indicators that there was something else out there other than the physical reality that we know and understand. And when I started to really inspect that deeply and go deep into my faith and make that connection was when, I started hearing my mother's voice, and I still hear it to this day. When I'm making food, I can hear her tell me, put a little more of this in the salad, or do this or do that. And so we call it transition because they've left the body, their soul has left the body, and it has transitioned into a new place. And it just requires you to elevate your ability to connect in order to connect to that new place. Now, if you have things that disconnect you, like forgiveness challenges, regret, anger, resentment, and a variety of other lower vibrational energies, that will block you from making a connection to your transitioned loved one. And as a result of that, you don't get to experience that new relationship that I'm describing.
I didn't even think this conversation is going to go there today. I'll be very honest with you too, but my dad passed away 17 and a half months ago.
Wow.
And I had a different upbringing than yours. I mean, I had a blue collar, hardworking. My dad worked at Ford Motors for 30 plus years. Just a good soul of a man. Like I mean, you'll never hear one person ever mention a bad word about him. Always had a smile, always positive, just a good man, a good dad. And I was the 45-year-old that would talk to my dad 3 times a day. I would call my dad on the way to work every day, have a conversation. Middle of the day, my mom or dad would call, and they would both be there having a coffee, just to check up on me. And then before I go to bed every night, I would call and have a conversation with him. And I'd had a conversation with him May 6th at around 10 p.m. Then I got a call May 7th at 6 a.m. And he just got up, went to the washroom. And I've told this story before tons of times on my podcast. Went to the washroom, looked at my mom, walked back in the bedroom, and fell in front of her and died instantly. Never smoked, wow. Never drank, power walked every day, had a massive heart attack and died. So there was no closure to it. And 17 months later, I'm still having a hard time of closing it because I miss him dearly. I went through this first 75 days every single day going to the cemetery, and I would just sit there. And my dad loved crossword puzzles. And before Christmas, I had bought him this massive crossword book. And when he passed, I took it from his house, and he had gone through maybe about 30 pages of it. And I would go there and do 2 crosswords, sitting there, two to 3 crosswords every day for 75 days. And until this, I mean, wow. It's been 17 months. I still go there 2-3 times a week because I miss him. And you can't, there's no other thing about it, right? I miss hearing his voice. I miss just being able to hug. And it's crazy because he was a very hardcore European where he was a great dad, but not affectionate dad. But later on in life, now that he had grandkids, he became affectionate to the point where every time I see him, I'd hug him, I'd give him a kiss on his forehead. And we became even closer as we got older. and we spent a lot of time, and he spent tons of time with the grandkids and stuff. But I feel like there was so much more I still wanted to do with him. So
Yeah.
that emptiness of I've done tons of public speaking. I talk about living with no regrets. That's something I'm very passionate about, because I'm with my kids every single day. I mean, I my kids are my workout partners. I get home, they go to the gym with me. I still drive my kids as an entrepreneur. I still drive my kids to school every day. They go to both in high school, and I still drive them to school every day. But and I try to live with no regrets. But because it was so sudden, I feel like there's regrets still there. There's things I still miss, things I still want to do with him. Right. So as you're bringing this up, I just wanted to just let you know my mindset, because
Yeah.
I haven't found that transition yet. I find it very hard.
By the way, thank you for sharing that. You have me tearing up over here, because I could just tell how much you love your dad, and what
Yeah.
what a important person he was in your life, and how much pain you still have in your heart, and that's natural. The more love you have for someone, the more pain you're going to have when you lose them. My pain was total agony. For 2 years, it was a lot of agony. Also, 2 years is still young in the journey. People will tell you in our culture, oh, you should be over it in a couple months. And it's like, no, if you have a deep, intimate relationship with someone for 45 years, you're going to have to learn to do life differently.
Yeah.
And it takes a while for that to set in. Every birthday, every Christmas is a new opportunity to learn, or every holiday for that matter, is a new opportunity to learn how to do life differently. So, year one, like, it's just surreal. Year two, you kind of have an idea of what happened in year one. So you're like, this is what Christmas, or this is what Hanukkah is going to be like. It's going to be a little different now. But you're still kind of, year one is the first time. Year two, you think you know a little bit about it. And so you walk in a little different. Year three, you have a little better understanding what life is like without them calling you 3-4 times a day, as you've described. And so it takes a while to fully process that. And the more that you love them, the longer it takes. But there's some tools that you can utilize. And one is to pull up pictures of them.
Yeah, I do that all.
And this is what I tell people: is you pull up pictures of you and of them, and you just think about the good times, the times that make you laugh. My mom used to hide and scare the crap out of me. Like, I'd walk downstairs and she'd jump out behind the refrigerator, and I'd just faint to the ground kind of thing and scream like a little girl. And then I would do the same thing to her. And we had these moments. And so these are the times that you reflect on, and you laugh, and you go back to that laughter state. And that's part of processing all of these beautiful memories. And then you go to the times that you need forgiveness for. Like, maybe you weren't as grateful for them as you should. Maybe you didn't honor them as much as you should have. Maybe you didn't do the best that you could have as a son. And I certainly have a long list of things that I need forgiveness for. And then the last item is the things that we need to forgive them for. So maybe your dad wasn't that affectionate. It's like, Dad, I forgive you for that. Right now, we don't think to forgive our transition loved ones, because we love them so much, we just forgive them. We don't want to make an issue, but there's things that are in our heart that we might say, like, Dad, you were late picking me up from school, and that embarrassed me, and I just want you to know I forgive you. And when you run through that process of going through the good times and then going into deep forgiveness, both the forgiveness that you need to receive and the forgiveness that you need to give, you process those emotions and those memories. And it might be that you need forgiveness because you weren't there toward the end the way you wished you would have been. And so you might need to just offer that up. I need forgiveness. I wish I could have been there more. I didn't know, I'm holding this on my heart. It's heavy. I need forgiveness here. And as you go through this process, eventually you clear out all the mud between you and them in the relationship. And pretty soon that light will connect you. And that light becomes a powerful way to, go through life. As everything kind of transmutes. The regret, the pain, the resentment transmutes from dark into light. Eventually, your relationship is pure light. And I teach a lot of people going through grief exactly how to do that. It's a process that I've used personally with both my mother, my father, my grandparents, friends. I've had many people near and dear to me, transition. And so I've used this process a lot, and I still do. I still pull up pictures of my dad as a kid and try to better understand who he was, so I could better understand the man that he became, so I could better understand how he operated, so I could better forgive him, better connect to him, better understand. That's the process that I teach people.
When he, I'll tell you one more last thing, and then we'll move on. When he passed, my biggest, I don't know why, but the first month or 3 weeks, I was just like, I had this fear of like people not remembering him. I don't know
Yeah.
why. And I took pen and paper and I literally did two children's books in his memory within a
Wow.
4 week period. And I released both. And
Amazing.
the first is called, and they're actually pictures of my son, my daughter, and him. They actually look like them. I don't know if you can see this here. And
I see it.
the first one is called Strawberry Hill: A Lesson of Gratitude, and his Grandpa Joe's Adventures. And the second one is Kindness Goes a Long Way: Grandpa Joe's Adventures.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And I did that. And my son has a had a history with a local hospital, Sick Kids Hospital. So the all the funds raised from that went to goes to the charity, and it still does. So it was that fear, and I find that
Yeah.
over the last 17 months, my biggest sticking point, I think, Ryan, is what I see my mom. See, because now I've taken on, I have my family, but now I've taken on another family because I'm kind of the supporter of my mom and my sister, and I see the grief my mom has gone through. And my mom and my dad were married for 52 years. My mom met my dad when she was 13. My dad
Wow.
took early retirement at 55. My mom decided, she was 6 years younger, decided to take early retirement too. And from 55 till he passed 75, they never spent one day apart. So all of a
Wow.
sudden she has this empty house, and she's gone through all those stages. You hear people go through grief, right? Where it's the anger, but they don't, they seem to always mix up. One day she's angry,
Yeah.
one day she feels sad, one day she misses him, one day she hates him, one day she hates everybody around. One day she'll walk to the store and see an old couple walking and be like, that should be us. And it's just this is roller coaster that I'm, as a son, trying to guide her and help her through the process too, which I think in a way has helped me heal, but it sucks seeing my mom going through all this pain, right? So
Yeah.
grief, the passing of a loved one is never an easy, and it's something that it's like I said, it's a day-to-day learning process, as a
Yeah.
day-to-day understanding more and more. So I appreciate that. I didn't even think this conversation would go here today, so I appreciate it went that way.
Yeah. I'll share with you that on a spiritual level, that a soul knows when it's time, and your dad knew, like, this was it. And there's a lesson to be learned from the person's life and from the way that it ended that we all should drink deeply from. And as long as we're constantly trying to understand, what is the lesson that this is here to teach me? How is the lesson of my father's life, the way he transitioned, my mother's grief? What is this teaching me so that I can teach my children and teach the world at large through, your powerful medium that you have here? Then we're always learning, and we're always extracting the lessons, and we're always growing. And spiritually, a lesson will continue to come your way until you learn it. And so once you learn it, then you move on to another lesson. And so the way that we speed up a process is we just try to really deeply learn the lessons that it's here to teach us. Right? For example, your father transitioning very suddenly, I'm sure taught you to value life. And obviously it's taught you to honor him. And it's taught you to write these children's books, and it's taught your children to honor you, I'm sure. And there's so many beautiful lessons that his life is here to teach us. And, the extreme difficulty around the way he transitioned creates a whole new set of lessons that, that you just wouldn't have if it would have been any other way. And so we just want to try to drink as deeply as we can from the lessons that each moment and each experience has to teach us. And when we do that, we evolve very quickly.
I appreciate that. Let's change topic a bit, and I want to talk about your book, Nothing to Lose.
Yeah.
When did you take, what age were you when you took pen to paper to that, and what guided you to start writing this book?
I wrote it I wrote it during the 2008 recession, and that was, I was in my late 20s, and I published it about 32 or so. But I wrote it late 20s, early 30s, and got it published when I was about 32. I wanted to pay tribute to my stepfather. He was my mentor. My mother ended up marrying him. He became my stepfather, and he taught me entrepreneurship. And he had transitioned and passed away abruptly in my arms. It was a very traumatic experience, and I wanted to pay tribute to what I had learned. I wanted to honor him, and I wanted to share my path because I hadn't really shared it before. And I'd had a lot of adversity that I felt that if I shared vulnerably, that I would help other people through their adversity. And I'm proud to say that the book is still in print, making an impact around the world. And it's over 11 years later. And so it was a very meaningful project, and it still continues to make its impact.
When you started the process of writing the book, from pen to paper to the moment you said, because when you're writing something like that that has a lot of emotion and feelings behind it, right? I mean, a lot of impact too. And I always find this curious with authors. I had Robin Sharma on. Like, when do you know that book is done?
Picasso
Like,
has a saying that great art is never finished; it's only abandoned. And that's the dilemma of the artist. We want to make it great, and then at some point in time we realize that this thing has run its course. So if we're doing it correctly, we're pouring our all into it. We want to put more into it. And then obviously with publishing, you have a deadline.
yeah.
And pretty soon you have no choice but to put pens down to make your deadline. So that's the technique. But no great art is ever finished. It's only abandoned.
Have you written any other books since then?
Yeah, I wrote Rock Bottom to Rock Star, which was published in 2016, which helps people go from rock bottom to rock star. Pretty self-explanatory. And I'm currently working on my third book. And I've also made a couple of movies. I've made a documentary on YouTube called Nothing to Lose, the documentary, and I'm working on another documentary now as well.
From the book to the documentary for YouTube, what was the transition? How much was the timeline from one to the other?
Well, as I was completing Nothing to Lose, I invited cameras to film the journey of the promotional launch. And then I realized that I didn't realize, my soul said, let's get some cameras on here and maybe it'll be interesting, video on me launching this thing. And then during the filming, I found out my son had autism. I was dealing with my mother who had just fallen down a flight of stairs. And then my book became a #1 New York Times bestselling book. And so all of my dreams were achieved, although I had, my writing dreams, I should say, although I was dealing with some serious family adversity during that time. And so it became a great story of how to overcome those adversities while still pursuing your dreams.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Your new book, when do you have plans to, or do you have a deadline already set with your publisher?
I don't. I write every day, every single day.
You had a big smile. You had a
close.
big smile to that.
Yeah, it's getting closer. You know,
Do you have a title yet? Are you allowed to say it?
It's called Altar Call, which is the name of the movement that I've started.
Yeah.
And Altar Call, we help people alter their lives so that they can answer their calling. And so I've been working on the back end aspect of this book for quite some time, building a community, creating an entire ecosystem. And now, I'll drop the book once I've built the community and the ecosystem to such a size that, I'll have tens of thousands of people helping me launch the book.
I want to dive into that. I love that you said that, because I'm a strong believer in building community. And I did that with my brand Camorra, which is January will be 17 years. It was all about building community where it was local mom and pop-up martial art gyms and just building a community where we had that support. We supported them. We helped them because I had a decent knowledge. And my first company from 19 to 24 was in the fitness industry. So I had a good understanding of how to build back-end systems, how to help gyms. So a lot of the process started off in that direction. We're helping them build gyms, and they would turn around with our product and building a community. Let's talk about that. Explain or teach. Give me an example or teach how important building a community is for an entrepreneur, whether you're a speaker, whether you're a podcast host, whether you have a product. That building the community. I love that you said that.
Well, today community is one of the most important currencies that you can possibly have. People are lonely. They work remote. Many people, we're isolated. Our family size is much smaller than it used to be. So our community connection has been relegated to very small circles. It used to be that the only way you could survive is by being connected to a large family. Yeah. And now you can survive by yourself with no family whatsoever. And so we have to have other forms of community because the family structure has been reduced, considerably. And so community is extremely important now, more so than ever. And you have to build it. And the way there's process to building a community. My last company, ViSalus, we had a community of hundreds of thousands of people that were, in support of our products and our company. And so it was a powerful way to build a movement. To build a business is to build a movement. And that's been my focus at Altar Calls. I'm not building a business, I'm building a movement. And it requires a lot of work and a lot of development, and you have to build people into leaders, and then you have to create leadership structures, and there's a lot of work to actually having a large movement. And I built one at ViSalus that impacted millions of people, and my intention is to go far beyond that with Altar Call. And so I'm meticulously working through that process now, 3 years into the journey of building Altar Call.
With your prior company, how long of a process was it till you built to those numbers?
About 5 years, about 6 years. So it took me about 6 years to get to a point where I was, I had hundreds of thousands of people in my community, and then year 7, it broke through to millions of people. So it's a process. It takes 5 years to build a foundation. You're never going to build a business foundation faster than 5 years. It is impossible. Some people will build businesses very quickly. They take in capital, maybe they pull teams from other companies, or they have working relationships that they monetize and they take action on. But it takes 5 years to build something that's going to withstand the test of time. Some of these companies that do it much quicker, they're taking advantage of some different building methods than building something that you're going to proudly have for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to that saying, there's no overnight success, right? Everything takes time and effort, and it's a process to everything. So I love that.
Yeah.
With this, I mean, obviously, when you had this mindset of obviously building this community and building this mastermind community, the long-term goal was obviously, I guess, the book launches and everything else. So it was just different layers of this brand. Where do you see this brand going? Like, where do you see it going besides a community based, like product wise, launch wise? Like, how often do you run masterminds?
Every week we have a mastermind that runs. We have various products. We have, in essence, we have experiences, we have programs, and we have coaching. And, eventually we'll have thousands of coaches, and we'll have experiences happening all around the world, and we'll have products to support our members all around the world. And we'll cover 100% of a person's lifestyle over time. Right now, we're teaching leaders how to become more effective and more productive and more impactful as leaders. Eventually, we'll have a number of different products to support our community. I'm a builder, and so I just put one brick down every single day, and eventually, over X many years, I'm going to look at quite an impressive structure. So I don't get really too caught up in what is the 5-year and 10-year strategy, because that I think is doesn't make a lot of sense. I think what the potential is, and the potential is massive. That there are benchmarks, there are multi-billion-dollar companies, and they're in similar industries or parallel or even your same industry. And as a result of that, okay, this is where I could potentially go. Now, how do I get there? I execute. Yeah. Right. And product innovation is part of your cultural philosophy. Hiring and scaling and recruiting and developing, and all of that is just constantly working with the culture and the chemistry necessary to create great innovations and great products. Like, we're investing in AI technology, we're working with different hardware, we're experimenting in a variety of different areas that will eventually turn into great product and significant value. It just takes a process to do that. And so I'm just a builder, and I just wake up every single day and I build.
When you're building something, do you always have an exit strategy in mind?
No, but I've exited enough and I know how to exit that I build everything to be exitable.
Okay.
I want to build
Yeah.
it in such a way that it has value and it can be exitable. But the person I'm seeking to exit is me. It's like if you build a business that you can exit from, meaning, you can turn it over to highly qualified, well-skilled, passionate people to run, then you have something that not only can you exit from someday and receive the dividends from your hard work, but maybe someone else will want to buy it because it's exitable, meaning it's run with strong financial stewardship, it has, a strong legal stewardship, and it has a scalable product offering that really matters to a, core group of people.
I love it. I love it. Fatherhood. What does fatherhood mean to you?
What did you say?
Fatherhood.
Fatherhood. Fatherhood is leadership. I'm a, I seek to teach my son the values and the wisdom that I have, so that way, I leave him love and I leave him wisdom that he can then leave to others. And each and every single day, I have an opportunity to grow in my relationship with him and my connection with him to do just that.
If something were to happen to you today, in a few words, how would you want to be remembered, described by your loved ones and your friends?
I would want to be described as a person who loved God with all of his heart and therefore loved his son and his brothers and sisters and his friends and family with, an eternal love.
Anything you want to leave our audience with today?
I think that's it. I think that's it. I'm a deeply spiritual person, and I go as deep into my relationship with my faith and my Creator every day, and I try to bring that love to as many people as I possibly can. And that's the formula that I've had to, live a life with a lot of joy and a lot of bliss.
I love it. This conversation has been awesome. When you go into a podcast, and like I said, I've been on, I think 120 as a guest in the last couple of years, and I've interviewed a little over 200 people on our podcast. You never know what the connection will be. You never know how authentic somebody's going to be, and everything about you is authentic. Everything about you is real, and I love this. So I appreciate you coming on, man. This has been an awesome conversation, Ryan.
Thank you, man. God bless you. I appreciate you. And if the audience wants to get a hold of me, I'm Real Ryan Blair on Instagram, and or you can catch me at altercall.com.
Any other avenues that you can get a hold of you?
No, those are the easiest. If you DM me, I'll DM you back. I love making connections. And I love serving and helping people as best as I can. I'm sure you picked that up. It's like, this is what I'm here for. This is what I live for.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much, brother.
All right, brother. God bless.